I've never leased a beat my whole life at this moment. Like, I've always been against that, but I also am trying to embrace 2018 and the new ways that certain people are doing things. There's so much online content that like these corporations are paying for beats, and even the Instagram clips like pay better than a lot of than all rappers.
Peace, what's going down? It's DJ Payne 1 for Beatstars.com with a very special guest, the guy that I've called the foremost DJ preserving hip-hop culture, still relevant currently. My man Statik Selektah, what's going down? Appreciate you sitting down with us.
I appreciate that, man. What's good?
Life is good. I know life is busy for you. I've read the interviews and I've seen the work ethic. You know, I've caught you in a couple cities performing. And then I know that you've just signed a deal with Roc Nation. Congratulations. You've also just joined Beatstars, so you got a lot on your plate right now.
Yes, sir.
Let's go back. As I understand, you started producing before you started DJing. You always put DJing first in your life, you know, which is understandable. But you've done everything from DJ for Tribe Called Quest to be featured as a DJ character on Grand Theft Auto. That's crazy.
Yeah, I never DJed for Tribe, but I DJed for Q-Tips. So, like, during Rock the Bells, we would like come out and do like Q-Tip solo joints, and then Ali Shaheed would DJ for Tribe. But I toured with Tribe many times, so you know that was always an honor.
Yeah, that's nuts. And then your first placement was KRS-One. So there's a lot I want to talk about. I'm trying to shave it down to just a couple questions. Firstly, would you say your position as a DJ, you know, you have extensive experience in that world, both on radio and in clubs, made you more marketable and accessible as a producer to the rappers that you've worked with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up idolizing, you know, the DJs that became producers like Primo and Marley Marl, Pete Rock. So, like, when I started taking production serious, I was already DJing for, you know, over 10 years. So, like, even though I made beats technically before I even owned turntables, it was like, that was something just in the back of my head I always just did for fun. And then when it was time, I knew when it was time. So I think that's an important thing in my career. And I think everybody's career is knowing when to present something. You know, a lot of people just go from the bedroom to the stage and just there's no in between. And you know, you get one first impression.
And that's a crazy networking lesson, too, because it wasn't just that you were coming to these rappers saying, I got beats, I got beats, I got beats. It was that you formed some kind of working relationship with them as a DJ, so it was a give and take.
They knew me as like a mixtape and radio DJ. And then, you know, by the time I started working on my first album, I was getting phone calls from like A-list rappers like, yo, who's doing the beats? I'm like, me. And they didn't even know I did beats. I mean, no one did. So.
And you're talking about the 2007 album.
Yeah, my Spell My Name Right, the album, which was the first album I dropped. That was the first time a lot of people heard my tracks anyway. I was sprinkling them on like mixtapes and shit, but you know how that goes. Nobody takes it serious until it hits a store, you know?
True. Who put that album out?
It was my label Show Off, and then we did it through Landspeed with Brick Records.
I saw back in 2013 a Duck Down video on YouTube where you're using Serato cue points to chop a sample. Yeah. What's your current production setup?
Pretty much the same exact thing. I use, you know, lately I've been buying a lot of records, so I haven't been using Serato unless I absolutely need to. I mean, obviously I use Serato every day DJing, but everything's been straight up vinyl recently. It's funny, too, because that video you're talking about is probably a record that I ended up getting on vinyl after the fact, but I sampled it off like MP3 that was sent to me, which I try to stay away from doing that. And
then that was, I think in that same video you were using Pro Tools as the digital audio workstation. You still sticking with that formula?
Yeah, same way.
I think a lot of DJs have probably messed with the cue points in Serato, but I've never seen anybody do it like that, like you would use an MPC.
Yeah, I mean, now they got Serato Sample, which basically brought, you know, there's so many things you could do with that now. I mess with that sometimes.
I've been recommended that, so I got to get into it. But, you know, back to your production resume, you have a hell of a resume, everything from having worked with Nas, 2 Chainz, KRS-One, and my personal favorite track of yours was AZ Animal. I found out way after the fact that you had done that record.
My paid placement, like my first decent check.
That's a cool addition, because I love that beat. That was off the Format, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge AZ fan.
I always hated the mix of it. That was the record that, like, I was like, you know what? For now on, I'm mixing my own records.
You're still mixing your own records then?
Yeah, to this day. The only time in my whole career I didn't mix a record was like the Eminem record, or like I think there was like a D Block record or something. Besides that, like I mixed hundreds of records. I try to make sure I mix everything I produce.
On the one hand, you have a crazy resume, but on the other hand, and I think even more importantly, you have a hell of a brand. And from the very beginning, you branded yourself as a DJ and a producer so cohesively. Would you say that that branding has been a major key in your longevity?
Yeah, absolutely. It's everything put together. I mean, it's, you know, to this day, Shade 45, I've been on for like, I think 13 years now. Doing radio is always, like, I started doing radio when I was 14 years old. So it was like always a big part of my life, just growing up hearing people on the radio. But then beyond that, to me now, it's like my weekly mixtape, you know, because I'm not doing mixtapes like I used to. Nobody is really, but I used to do mixtapes every 2 weeks. Now it's like I feel like I still do a mixtape every week just because I get to showcase this kind of music. Especially on my show, it's like kind of different than anybody else's show. You know, you got certain shows on Sirius that are very underground, and then you got commercial shows. I feel like I mix both in the worlds on a fine line. But between doing radio and then producing and DJing, like, and you know, even beyond that, like A&R and people's albums, like I A&R Joey Badass album, and you know, obviously a lot of terminology stuff, and just through the years doing all that together, it goes in a blender and makes your brand. You know what I mean? Like you can't just expect one thing to be your brand.
And you linked up with Joey Badass early, and you've had a relationship with Nasty for a while too, who I just interviewed. Actually, he joined Beatstars too, so it's kind of an interesting coincidence.
Brought Nasty in, like we were working on Joey's first album in my crib, and I hit him Nasty. I was like, yo, come through. And I introduced him to Joey, like, yo, this dude's an OG. He mixed a lot of, like, you know, Mobb Deep records and all these other stuff. And he came in, and him and Joey kicked it off. And now Nasty's, like, head A&R at Pro Era Records. So I'm happy for him, you know? Yeah,
that was definitely a dope connection. A lot of producers, you know what I'm saying, they get placements, but very few have put out album after album and become a brand. And I read, and I don't know much about this, I read that you had a marketing background for a while. You had a company called Show Off Marketing.
Yeah, so Show Off Marketing was something that I started in 2002, and we were doing like 50 Cent when he first came out, the whole campaign leading up to Get Rich or Die Trying. We did the movie Get Rich or Die Trying. We did the Reebok shoes. Basically everything G-Unit Records for years. And then we also did like Def Jam, Atlantic, Virgin, Capitol Records. Like I was getting my own accounts when I was 18, so it was like that was something we did up in Boston, and then that turned into a regional thing where we were doing all New England. All that stuff, just like I had to get when I got out of high school, I started doing Street Team because I thought I was gonna move downtown Boston and just like start DJing right away, and it doesn't work like that. You gotta, you know, make a name for yourself. And everywhere I've moved, you know, between Boston and then to New York, it's like kind of got to start over a little bit. Even though when I moved to New York, it was like I already had a name in radio and in the industry that much, but it was the same thing as far as DJing clubs out here. You got to start over. It's like those relationships, they don't care about the industry connections. You got to show and prove. We came from like the old days though, where like the Street Team was like so important, and going and standing on the corner and giving out CD samplers or mixtapes for hours. And then as soon as I started my label, it was like, my first album came out in 2007. That's when iTunes started to take over a little bit. And it's like, you kind of got to start over with that too, because, you know, the old guerrilla marketing was dope and now everything's digital. It's like, I've seen so many different phases of the industry that now, you know, you don't even see posters up in New York anymore. It's crazy. But
do you take some of that old school guerrilla marketing, you know, person to person type interaction and bring it into the digital age?
Absolutely.
No one can deny that your work ethic is crazy, but a lot of people don't see the work that goes behind this brand, the stuff that we're talking about. What would you say has been the most beneficial or powerful branding decision you've made in your career so far?
Really just sticking to my sound, man. A lot of people abandoned that grimy East Coast sound, even like some of the bigger names doing it, to like go do EDM or go do, you know, different styles. And it's like, I think my biggest marketing tool is that I'm still doing that same boom. You'd call it boom bap, you'd call it New York hip hop, whatever it is, but a lot of people abandoned it or fell back, and it's like I just stuck with it and ended up having #1 albums on the chart, like, you know, doing Joey's album or doing the Shady 15 or doing Action's album. Like there's so many things we did where like people gave up on that sound, and I just stuck to it. And to this day now you're seeing a whole new generation of kids doing it. So that was the most important thing to me.
So here's another can of worms. Samples and sample clearance, they've been in the news a lot lately. and I've read some interviews where you've talked a lot about how with certain placements, labels couldn't clear the samples or they just refused to, given their budgets. But recently you've been finding some workarounds. I know you already talked about finding samples from far enough back where the copyrights expired, but you've also been working with producers who have created their own sample kits that sound vintage, specifically Dream Life, who's a Beatstars member. Actually, he's the reason, a major reason that I've really stuck with this internet marketplace. How did you start working with him and using his kits?
He's real dope, man. He sent me like a random email one time, and I listened to what he sent, and I was like, oh, it's all right. Like I think I chopped up one of them, and I was like, yo, send some more stuff. And the second batch he sent was like mind-blowing. Like it just was exactly what I was looking for, and I was in a certain phase. Shout out to my man MTK too, who he was sending me stuff like last year, and now I'm like, a lot of my stuff, it really helps, because a lot of this stuff they're giving me like replaces the samples in a way that it's even come down to it sometimes where they'll send me something and be like, yo, I know what that is, I use that, but you flipped it, like you did it your own way. And that really changes the game, especially with these major label placements, because, like I said, a lot of producers gave up on the sound because they weren't getting their publishing, or they were getting sued, or, things weren't making albums because of samples. And I've always stuck to it no matter what, even, through the certain records that, I got a whole album of 2 Chainz that's coming, and it's like the samples held it up completely, but we found a couple ways around it. So now it's coming, but you got to just stick to it and like stick to your sound, and guys like Dream Life and MTK help you do that, and still, you don't have to worry about the sample. So that's really changed a lot. My next album's I'm excited about the sound on it. Yeah,
it's dope because you can stick with that, and then there's controversy too, because it's like you got to split publishing, but it's like the difference between splitting publishing with a producer who respects that game, and you might only have to give them 15% compared to putting your fate in the label's hand. They might take everything from you. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back to Dream Life and this whole internet thing. I personally, I tell this story from time to time, but I was really initially resistant to putting my beats online. Even after I joined Beatstars, which was like 2 years ago, and then meeting people like Dream Life really made me a believer, just because he showed me what the possibilities were. So I got to ask you, after seeing, now that you've launched your online beat store, which looks better than mine, I got to holler at the designer. What was it that made you decide to start making your beats available for license through Beatstars?
There's a couple different things. Obviously, seeing you talk about it helped out, but Dream Life had been telling me about it, and I had been so just against. I've never leased a beat in my whole life at this moment. Like, I've always been against that, and I've always been one of those guys that, I value the price on an exclusive beat for myself and all that. But I also am trying to embrace 2018 and the new ways that certain people are doing things. I have just such a catalog of unused stuff that I was like, I'm going to put certain stuff on the site and, take a chance with it. Really, I talked to Abe on the phone, and he really sold me on it, and Mike and the whole team at Beatstars, and they really just, I'm giving it a shot, and so I'm excited about it. I've been excited about doing something with beats like this in a while, because I also don't want to hurt my business, of people coming and paying the dollar that I want for beats. So it's like, it's kind of, I'm meeting everybody halfway and giving this a shot, and I'm excited to see what comes from it. I know there's a whole world of artists out there and people that don't even necessarily have a way to get at me for beats. So it's like, this is kind of like putting the middleman there,
Yeah, so something I hear a lot of producers say now in this internet era, and I hate that they're saying this, is that they have to blend in and follow trends just to make a living. And in your NPR interview, and you just said it yourself too earlier, you gave the opposite advice, which is you have a specific sound and specific niche in hip-hop music and in the culture and the music industry as a whole. How important is having that niche and sticking to it?
It's everything to me. Like, I don't want to be doing this otherwise. Like, sometimes, especially doing this for 20 years, it's like, sometimes it all is like, damn, where's this going and all that? And then I meet a 14-year-old that tells me I'm his favorite, and it's like, damn, like, this is still great. There's still new generations coming out. Like, I remember, like you said, Joey was a young kid when I met him and linked up, and I was like, wow. I mean, rest in peace, Mac Miller. When I met Mac, I was like, damn, this 18-year-old's in my house, while we're partying, making music and all this. And then I met Joey, and he was 16. And then I met the kid Astro, and he was like 15, and I kept meeting these kids. And then when I went on tour with Joey, it's like we toured for 6 years straight, and I'm meeting like children that are into this hip hop, like this New York hip hop sound that I'm like, damn, there's a lot of faith for the future. This is a hope, you know what I mean? And for a long time, I was like, oh, is this thing an old man's sound now? Like, what's going on? And then you got cats like Kendrick and J. Cole and all that. But I think it's even more important for these young kids that are literally 14 years old talking about trying to make that sound continue. So that's important. But that's another thing why I'm doing the Beatstars thing. Like, one of the things Abe really sold me on was like, you know, I could find new artists through this as well, like certain kids that end up doing stuff to these beats that, you know, I might not have ever heard if I didn't do this. So that's a big part of me doing this Beatstars thing too, because I'm presenting it like I don't have to do this. Like, I'm chilling. Like, I do my own business. I DJ all year. I tour, all that. I don't have to put these beats on this website. But the point of me doing it is getting it to ears that might not get it otherwise and hearing new sounds. So I want to feel inspired the same way other people, you know. Like, lately I've been doing a lot of Instagram lives late at night and having people play beats, and I'll play them a beat and they play me a beat, and then it's like, I just want to keep feeling inspired by it. So if I could hear some new voices on some of my tracks by doing this, and at the same time, you know, get the sounds out there that, like I said, the catalog's so crazy. I'm going to be putting up a lot of beats. It's like, I'm just excited to hear what some of these things that might have gone unused are going to sound like, you know?
Yeah, you used to do that live on. Do you still do that as part of your radio show?
We did that once with Illmind.
Yeah, I tuned in for that. It was you were harsh too. You weren't playing. Illmind wasn't playing either.
I mean, you can't, man. I keep it a buck with people.
Yeah.
I don't want someone to shut up or anything, you know. So just you got to keep it a buck with people, especially when they're chasing their dream. When I was a kid, and you know, I was like 15 years old, and I thought I was nice at scratching and all that. Certain older cats were like, "Yo, you gotta learn how to do that better," and that shit makes you better. Like, I'm happy they didn't sugarcoat it, you know.
Hey, look, I'm the guy that gets criticized for being bitter and this and that when I even open my mouth online about something not being up to a certain standard. So I'm with you. I definitely feel like that was a part of the culture, just that competitive element, that intergenerational pressure that you get put on to the younger generation that's emerging, and it's, to me, it's not hating. It's just it's fostering in people this competitive spirit so that they can, you know, if you can survive this gauntlet, you can survive anywhere.
And you won't survive the industry if you can't take criticism or letdowns, period. It's like every win someone gets, they went through, you know, 50 to 100 losses to get that. So
yeah, that's definitely important. And you've been a part of, I don't know how many albums or international tours. You've also been to a lot of producer events too. You know, I think we met years ago at iStandard in Chicago.
Yeah.
What advice can you give producers moving into 2019 to build successful brands for themselves?
Just get more creative. Like, it's definitely something that in my new sound now, I've been learning a lot, like with different synths and mixing samples and original sounds and stuff and shaping sounds. I just think the technology is just so at people's fingers now, man. You can get so creative, and a lot of the newer producers have been inspiring me because at this point I could do it blindfolded, make a dope hip hop beat with a bass line and a sample and the drums. Now I'm trying to switch up the tempo and just push yourself, man. If you don't keep learning, then life gets boring. So I've just been trying to learn new stuff, you know.
And to pick up on that, music technology has changed so much. It's crazy just to go from a physical 33-inch vinyl to streaming, where there's literally no physical or digital project that's tangible, and it's crazy to think what's going to happen in the future. And with the internet changing music, and with the music industry changing so much to catch up to the internet, where do you see producers 5 years from now?
The whole game is ill, man, because like you used to only get the big checks if you got someone placed on a video game or a movie or something. Now it's like there's so much online content that like these corporations are paying for beats, and you know, I've been doing a lot of work with Jordan Brand and doing like even the Instagram clips like pay better than all rappers. So it's like there's so many opportunities through social media that producers can get that nobody else can get. It's crazy. So it's like if you keep your beat catalog right and just filter it to the right people in certain ways, Beatstars is an amazing way to do it because you can, you know, put it out. You can organize it in any way you want, really, and just present it to these places. You just got to don't get comfortable. Just get on your hustle, network the right way without burning bridges, and the sky's the limit, man.
So how do people network with you? How do they find you on social media? How do they find your beats?
At Statik Select. I usually answer anyone that respectfully asks anything on Instagram. Like, I make sure my DMs are always empty. I either decline or accept, but as long as it's, you know, a mature question, I'll answer it. Some people are just like, yo, let's build. That don't work. That gets the decline. But if someone hits me and asks like a genuine question, I don't care if they ask where they can get my album or what sample I use, whatever it is, I respectfully answer it. So I'm not hard to get at.
All right, once again, I appreciate you sharing all that information. Welcome to the community. Much continued success. We're waiting on that 2 Chainz album. Hopefully we get a date soon, right?
The Currency album coming like next month. I got the CJ Fly album coming, executive produced by Joey. I got a lot of music's done right now, so I'm excited.
Okay, so follow Statik and get those updates. Grab those albums. Once again, appreciate you, bro. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Peace.
All right, peace, bro.